Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us once again Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome once again, Buck.
Thank you, sir.
We've discussed many things, many subjects. Normally, I start out with throwing you a softball so that you can hit it into the bleachers. Let's see. What profound thing would you like to offer to our audience? What profound bit of wisdom would you like to toss out as we start our conversation?
Well, how about this? Beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes clean to the bone.
That's pretty good, Buck. Did you do that? Did you make that up yourself, or is that?
No, I just draw on this fount of
that's good.
wisdom
That's
that
great,
I've accumulated over the years.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yes.
Well, all right. We talk about a lot of things. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the efforts to keep President Trump off the ballot, and also to put him in the penitentiary and to make certain that he has no chance ever again of being president. Are the efforts underway? Are they appropriate efforts? And then, is there some kind of sort of Machiavellian thing going on here, where where his enemies or supporters of the Democratic Party are hoping that he will get the nomination as their candidate will prevail, and so they know that his supporters are enraged by these efforts, and that just makes his Republican nomination more and more possible. And I think you'd mentioned the efforts, a rather arcane, I guess you could say, part of the 14th Amendment, the post-Civil War, posterior amendment, that might be used to keep him off the ballot. And I'm about to toss you the football here, but I think
Sure.
Recently in Michigan, the efforts to use this arcane part of the 14th Amendment to disqualify him for running for president were turned down in the courtroom. But it's far more complicated than that, and I'll let you opine on that.
Yes. Yes, this is a huge can of worms, and it's been floated around in the academy, and I think that it can turn into a really big affair sometime in the next 6 to 8 months as we get into primary season. The 14th Amendment, it's the single most important amendment that we've ever added to the Constitution. It's the longest amendment. I think that the Bill of Rights collectively is probably at least as important, but that's 10 amendments. We're talking about a single amendment here, and it was added in the wake of the Civil War. And it really changed the nature of the relationship between the national government and the states. It's done a great many things that can't get into tonight. But one of the things that it did was to say, if you had participated in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, you are ineligible to hold office until Congress removes that disability, until Congress says otherwise. And so this had the effect of keeping, I don't know the numbers, but probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who had served in the Confederate government or who had served in the Confederate armed forces from holding office until Congress remedied that. Congress in 1872 passed the Amnesty Act, which restored those office-holding rights to nearly all of the former Confederates.
And voting rights, too. You could not vote.
I believe you could vote, but you certainly couldn't.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
You couldn't hold all. I'd have to check into that. So, but I think voting was okay. But who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for African Americans who are Republican. You're going to vote
or some
for
carpetbaggers. Yes.
So you can't vote for one of your own number. So the argument that has been put forward is that if Trump has engaged in insurrection against the federal government, and of course the big hook there are the January 6th riots, or whatever you want to call them, and what you call them might be important, then he comes under that disability. He is ineligible to serve as president. He's ineligible to hold office. So that raises very many questions.
Could Congress fix it then?
Well, yes. Question number one is, before Congress fixes it, who decides if he has a, first of all, who decides what the thing on Capitol Hill was? Secondly, who decides if Trump had engaged in it, if it turns out to be insurrection? And then thirdly, Congress could, of course, remove that disability, but with the Republicans in the House of Representatives being in such utter turmoil right now, I think there's a fat chance of that happening, and there's no chance of that happening in a democratically controlled Senate.
Well,
So,
just pursuing the word insurrection,
yes.
this brings forth the call for dictionaries.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to think when the Oxford English Dictionary sprouted its wings, and I think they went letter by letter. So I don't think it was around in the 1860s. It started in the 1850s. I don't know if it made it there. There were American dictionaries out there, the New Century Dictionary. So a legal scholar or on this issue, it appeared the first thing to do is to get a definition of what an insurrection is, because it's not something that is a commonly used word, and there are all kinds of different nuances of domestic disturbances.
Yes.
So you could say Black Lives Matter and riot was in the, maybe was that an insurrection, or what does that mean? It means you're going to overthrow the government, I guess, and there would seemingly there'd be some plan, some will, some mechanism in place to accomplish that, rather than just being in the same town where a riot took place.
Yeah, I'm thrown back. I would start by looking at Sir William Blackstone and his very famous commentaries of the 1760s and see if he has anything to say about it, because that probably is very much in the forefront of the framers' thinking. And the Riot Act, of course, in England, which is just that, a riot act, not an insurrection act. So that would bear some looking at. But then who decides? Who makes the decision as to whether or not there was an insurrection? I suppose with the Civil War having just ended, and the victors get to decide that yes, this was clearly an insurrection. There was no serious question about that.
And the word they used made reference to the American Civil War, where
Yes.
it was just millions of people died, governments were established, people had the Bonnie blue flag or whatever, they wore Confederate gray, they had the diplomatic corps, a national capital, a constitution, I mean, all kinds of things. The word insurrection made reference to that.
Yes.
So to me, that would be the standard out there,
Well,
as opposed to a riot.
Yeah, I have to just give a brief for the other side for a minute. Does that mean the American Revolution was an insurrection?
Yes, it does.
But it was successful.
A successful insurrection.
Yes. Is there? Well, there is no such thing as a successful treason, if you think about it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
the victors say whatever, but I mean,
Yeah,
a
but yeah,
successful
clearly
the American Revolution was a successful
Yeah.
insurrection.
Clearly the authors of the 14th Amendment had
That's
this
what
thing
was in their mind. They
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
thinking about riots, or, there have been varying times in the country where, let's say in New England, there was the New England Confederation, or they were doing things, they were thinking about new governments.
Yes.
The Whiskey Rebellion, things like that happened. I mean,
And you got some treason trials out of that one too.
yes. Well, is that the marker of treason?
Well,
If
no,
for an insurrection to be there.
They were perfectly capable of using the word treason, and they did not. The word treason does appear elsewhere in the Constitution. So.
Was anyone in the January 6th, I guess, riots, I would use that word, did anyone convicted, and lots of people were in prison and for long terms, was anyone convicted of treason? Anybody
no.
treason was not ever brought up.
No, and treason, really, if you think about it, when you see treason trials in United States history, it's usually because the government is feeling very, very threatened, unsure of its it's trying to push its own legitimacy. So that's very interesting. But you saw during the January 6 hearings, different members of Congress would call it different things. Just as the Democrats will usually say, our democracy this, our democracy that, and Republicans will say, our republic or our constitutional republic.
Thus the names kind of their parties.
Well, I think that's serendipitous, actually.
I know that. They went the other way initially. I know.
Yes, but so the Democrats keep saying this insurrection, and Republicans keep saying it was a riot.
Well, I think you said something of consequence, as you often do, about not always, but
even the stop clock is right twice.
Well, occasionally you're right. That the fear often causes treason trials.
Yes.
I was frightened, and to me, I think the Democratic Party were frightened by the response that occurred, and because, in my opinion, the Democratic Party is a coalition of a lot of different groups that are nouveau in a way, as contrasted to the older population in the country, the older rural population that are out there, and they sort of coexisted. And there's quite a challenge. If you look at the people that were brought in and participated in the riot, there was an enormous homogeneous group of people that were the rioters. There weren't, as far as I know, there weren't too many. It didn't look like the people on the street. There were people that were the traditional old country Americans, whatever, Anglo-Saxons or whatever they were. And they were former military people. They were whatever. They weren't too. I guess you could say that. And that the fear of that happening really caused somewhat of an overreaction, or did it? I'll let it go at that.
Yeah.
Was that an overreaction? In many ways, it was. I didn't think the country was threatened at all by that. The guy walking around with some funny guy over there, he had a bearskin hat or whatever. Funny guys were wandering around, and it was kind of a jokey thing as opposed to a serious. Well, there was some anger there.
Well, there was some anger. There was some violence, and people at least incidentally died. But yeah, let's talk about this. And I'm going to get very critical of the Democratic Party for a few minutes. I'll nail the Republicans later. They've got their own. They certainly deserve. They've got their own set of really nasty.
That's right. They're not without sin.
Absolutely not. I think the whole Trump phenomenon is a horrific thing. But I'm going to go after the Democrats for a minute. That there are two different streams in the Democratic Party. One is the little guy, yeoman farmer, common man, big tent that has its origins in Jeffersonian democracy and the Jacksonian little guy. But then by the middle of the 20th century, you have sort of the academic elite coming in, the idea of progressivism and big government. So you get these two contradictory thoughts. On the one hand, democracy is good, everybody should have a voice. And on the other hand, coming down from the big northeastern universities, that the mass of people are too stupid to govern their own affairs, so they must be governed. So we will govern them and they will thank us for it. And so the Democrats usually in their PR campaign is, we're for the little guy, we're for the little guy, we're for the little guy. But every once in a while you will see a glimmer of what lies beneath from these elites who lead the party. And the two that immediately come to mind are when Obama said these people out in the country are clinging to their guns and religion, or when Nancy Pelosi refers to half the country as a basket of deplorables. So what you saw...
Wasn't that Hillary? Hillary said the basket of deplorables.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It was Hillary. All right, you're right. So correct me there. I would willingly bet Nancy Pelosi would endorse that. So... But yeah, and she said this during, both of these people, both Obama and Hillary said this during campaigns. I mean, even more so. So when you see this right-wing populist person who has nothing but contempt for for the American process. You know, in his own mind, maybe not. In his own mind, he claims that the process has been co-opted. And you get the orange man bad phenomenon. And then these people who cling to their guns and religion and who are deplorable show up at the Capitol and start doing this. You get that kind of horrified reaction from the Democratic elites. You mean we live in the same country as these people? They're trying to destroy us. They're coming for us.
Well, that's, and these are some of the contrary currents that are out there. I mean, so people, I think it's inevitable when you have 350 million people here from everywhere with all kinds of different viewpoints, all kinds of economic interests, all kinds of difficulties in their personal lives, all together here trying to get along. It's not unreasonable to see these things happen. I will, however, ask this question: and you may have touched on the extraordinary. I think you did actually. Some of the extraordinary animus against Trump and what he represents. Now, obviously, I hope he won't. If he's listening in, I hope he doesn't take offense, to my comments. But certainly, he's. It's rather questionable behavior, and he's conducted himself not often as a gentleman would, if I could say that. I mean, I hope that's not too much for him, and he certainly...
To quote Brett Butler, as a gentleman? Let's talk about that for a minute, because once again, and I remember during the 2016 campaign, and I had discussions with you and with several of our mutual acquaintances, and there was the Republican elite too. We have to manage.
Of course, the Republicans deserve some criticism.
Yeah, we have to manage this man. We have to have a brokered convention. We can't allow this.
Right.
And my response was that the Republican and Democratic leadership, these members of Congress, the top political leaders, you use the American public. You use them, manipulate them into voting for you, and then you go in and do whatever you want. I mean, this is taxation without representation 2.0. You're completely out of touch. The vast majority of members of Congress are old white millionaire men who have these.
If they didn't start that way, they
finish
got
that
way. That's
right.
right.
They vote themselves these massive pensions.
They have lots of tricks about getting some money.
So then, when a populist challenger to their precious system shows up, they say, well, we can't allow this. We can't allow the American people to actually have a voice in this. It was very contemptuous. And by having that reaction, you just stoke the fire. Now, once again, I do not hold a brief for Trump. I think the Trump phenomenon on the whole has been terrible. But the ruling elites have, by the way they have governed or failed to govern in the past 50 or 60 or 70 years, they have invited this. They've begged for it. And now they don't know how to control it.
Yes.
So.
Well, I take your comments to heart. That's certainly, these things happen. I'll make one little sort of comment I heard about the two candidates that we have presumably running for president. If they were next door neighbors, you would see President Biden wandering around in the front yard, sort of aiming, not quite sure. He's out there again. And then if Trump were your neighbor, he would have slept with your wife and then denied he did it. So, so that I think that says it all for the the character. At least I hope no one took offense that heard that, but I think it certainly, there's a great deal of truth in it, really.
Well, we do. I think that the American voter, all of us, need to take a good, long, hard look at ourselves and ask, how have we let this happen? Because ultimately, the American voters are in the driver's seat. And if we dumb down our education and we don't teach civics and we don't require any sort of personal responsibility, then these are the sort of people we get in these positions of leadership, and that's just disgraceful.
Well, on that subject, I mean, and I think we started out discussing and there are many reasons to think that there's people dislike Trump. They're horrified about his presence there. They don't want him to be there, and they're doing every effort that's possible to stop him from being on the ballot, giving the people the chance to vote. We don't. This person is. We're going to basically take that privilege away from you.
Yes.
You don't get the chance to express your opinion here, because we control the circumstance. And of course, when they say that, then all Trump's supporters, or all the populists, or all the people that his viewpoints resonate with, they are outraged, and they're going to do everything they can to put him in. And it appears that's happening. And
Yes.
I started the conversation by saying, is this some kind of sinister plot to put Trump in as the Republican nominee after being sullied by every kind of legal thing that you can think of, every kind of crime that you can imagine? He's stealing documents, he has all his girlfriend issues or whatever, defaming people, suits here, suits there, lying on his application for loans, whatever else. I mean, just everywhere, facing huge time, a lot of time in the penitentiary, losing all his wealth, and then occupying the news media to the extent that all the oxygen is removed. And presumably, maybe it's Machiavellian possibilities here, that people that are watching with in great attention the next electoral cycle think, well, our guy, no one takes offense to this, I don't believe our guy could beat meaning Biden can beat anyone else, but because Trump has so much baggage, and we're tossing more onto his little donkey cart, more baggage there, that he's the one person that Biden can seemingly beat, though the polls may come up with another opinion. And that's kind of the idea. And is this, I use the word fair, I don't think I've seen anything like this about a person that's considering running for office, and a huge effort is made to put the person in the penitentiary. Now, maybe I spoke too quickly. Was it John Michael Curley? I mean, the people did try and stop people, but maybe there's other facts out there. Maybe this is more common than I imagined as I think about it.
Well, certainly not this high profile. But if you look at Biden's polling numbers, if that's the plan, I've got to say it is a horrific plan. That Biden's got the worst numbers of any president since how long? And I'm just utterly amazed that there's been no hint of any sort of primary challenge here. I mean,
well, there has. I mean, some people have. I mean, I've small hints, but there are people
It's not. Kennedy's even running as an independent.
There's another guy who's maybe a congressman from Minnesota, I believe. He's going to run.
But it's amazing that he's not getting more traction, because I really think, and once again, the orange man bad phenomenon. I mean, yes, there's certainly substance there. That Trump is not presidential material, but the reaction is being so venomous and so vitriolic that it clearly is clearly overboard. And all the lawsuits, they should have stopped with the documents lawsuit. I mean, that's open and shut. It's absolutely open and shut. You could get him on that, but then every other lawsuit is piling on.
Every other district attorney that wants some publicity.
It makes a martyr out of the man.
Well, that's what's happened. And
it just energizes the base.
And I think to be fair to Trump, I mean, what sort of presidential term what did he do? Well, he tried to buy Greenland, or maybe he got a good deal. He sees it, from a real estate speculator in New York City, smoke a cigarette. Well, that's up there. It'd be great. We could have a little cruise, could go up there. People enjoy, cold weather. They could ship the ice. Icebergs could come down. Whatever. Man, let's just buy it. Who owns that piece of property? The people there do. Well, maybe they'll do it. Well, of course, that's fairly insane, but okay, the border wall, people say, what's happening? We want our country. We want a country. We want some boundaries. We want not anyone can just walk in. And so he saw that. And
this was the issue that got him elected. He talks about this. His poll numbers went through the roof, even though he himself is not able to build a wall on his own presidential initiative. But this is what he promised, and then he turned away from it when he became president.
Well, I mean, what I want to say is that many people would say among well, we didn't get Greenland out of it, but I don't know. He did some other things. I'm not sure. But there are some things that people say, well, this was a good policy. I approve of this policy. The country was more prosperous in those days.
The one good policy that I've heard come out of it was Operation Warp Speed, was getting that vaccine developed so quickly and getting it pushed out.
Well, of course, that saved the world.
But how much was he behind that? I mean,
well, what the presidents, when you say, well, Biden did this or so, and actually, I bet people just sit there and look out the window a lot, and their handlers say whatever they say to them, and that the machine just runs itself. And occasionally, why don't we do something with Greenland? Maybe have a little drink. Well, I don't think he drinks, but just sitting there. Why don't we just, which actually is, I don't know, that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I mean, and I have to say that, but
oh well.
Let's just give him credit for that. I mean, the fact that he would even consider something like that.
Yes.
But okay.
But anyway, back to where we started. As we get into primary season, will states attempt to say, based on our determination, Trump has engaged in insurrection and therefore he is not entitled to be on the ballot? Because even presidential elections, there's a lot of state machinery there. Now, the recent Michigan case, the Michigan courts said you can't do that at the primary stage. So you can't keep them off the primary ballot. But once we get to the general election, what might happen then? And once again, that can happen on a state level.
Well, the fury of if, in fact, I think the country's pretty much aware of his good points and bad points.
Yes.
I think it's pretty. Not too many mysteries about his behavior and what would happen. People know, and the fact that they would just not have his name on the ballot in one state, a crucial state, would just provoke unbelievable fury. It would, and indeed, it is one of those battleground states which really determine the president. And maybe Georgia's now a battleground state, but just a few states really have the role of putting the president in.
I'm afraid what we're looking at here is just two competing narratives, and if you've got your narrative, you're not going to listen to the other side. And what I will call the mainstream narrative, and this would be the Democratic and a fair chunk of the Republican narrative, is that this man is the representative of a sickness in our society. He is not presidential material. He should never have been able to get this far. It's an aberration. It shows that our system is broken if he could be successful. And then you've got the other narrative, the Trump narrative, that the entire system except for Trump and his values are broken. They've been broken for decades. These elites have just taken over. It's not democratic anymore. Real red, white, and blue Americans have been sidelined and oppressed and persecuted. And now that we've finally got a spokesman, the system is engaging in every illegal and dirty trick possible to break him. Where is the reconciliation between these two narratives? How can we get past them?
Well, on that note, Bucky, I think that was a fine summation of the situation that the country faces. And once again, thank you for your wisdom and sharing it.
Such as it is.
With our large TV audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.